Oh, hey. Hey, everybody. Hey, Sonia. How are you? Yes, we are going to have a really good chat today. I just got to pull my notes up. I'm out of breath. I left the gate open and my puppy, our mascot, went racing up the stairs. So I had to go make sure she's not allowed to be up there. So, oh, wow. A lot happened today. I was not actually expecting the trial to start. So, we're going to recap everything that happened today. Yeah, I know I'm not really sure what I saw either. So, we'll start just by summarizing the case in case some of you guys don't know. Please like the video and let me know that you're here. We want to be interactive and discuss. So, this is the case of Carly Gregg. She is now 15. She's 14 in March of this year. So, this case has gone this has been a speedy trial, especially, and maybe I'm hoping someone else knows because I still am not clear if they were allowed to use the insanity defense. It seems that way from opening statements, but I know that the judge was not happy with the defense over them not submitting evidence in time. They didn't have the expert report submitted, and they were supposed to have a hearing last Friday, but I saw nothing on that. And so, if anybody has heard what ended up happening with that, that would be great if you can let me know. But from the opening statements, it did seem like they're using the insanity defense. So Carly Gregg in March of 2024, this year, she is being charged with first degree murder of her mother and attempted murder of her stepfather. Ashley Smiley is her mother, and Heath Smiley is the stepfather. And by all accounts, this is a very intelligent young girl. She scored like a 30 on the ACTs in whatever grade, like 8th grade or something. That's wild. Like, I didn't even come close to that in my senior year of high school. So that's a wild score. So very smart, some mental health issues. Supposedly, we don't have a ton of information about this yet. Some information from one of the experts who was testifying for the state, who stopped her evaluation after doing the competency piece. Hey, Adrienne. So, competency is the individual's ability to participate in their own defense, right? And so, she was found competent. They stopped short of the insanity evaluation, which is called the Monotone evaluation, sometimes based upon a law called Monotone. But she said there could be something that has to do with medication because she apparently had just switched medication. There's some evidence of her smoking marijuana and how that plays into things. We'll talk a little bit about that too. So she's being tried as an adult in Mississippi. She is housed in an adult facility, not a juvenile facility. And for her safety, she is housed in isolation. So that's 23 hours in a cell. I don't know how many of you guys have been in a prison before, but 23 hours in a cell and 1 hour out so they can shower, do rec, whatever. I have some issues with that, even being tried as an adult. And I know that people are going to have a lot of different opinions about this because it's very hard to wrap your head around a violent act of this nature. But I want everyone to keep their minds really open about this. I have worked with people in a forensic hospital, people who have done similar things, and people who were truly psychotic at the time of what they did. And when these people stabilize and the reality sets in of what they have done, it is extremely traumatic for them and difficult to cope with. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I don't know where I fall on this exactly yet. I need more information, but I genuinely believe that she is in distress and is remorseful based upon very little information, but her behavior today. So we first have to talk about her dress, right? What did she wear today? Because her attorneys have been dressing her in this, it's like not age appropriate. They've been making her look younger, right? So like these weird schoolgirl kind of like, but like from the 50s, like not school uniform now, but like weird. Poor Carly. She's probably like, I have to wear this. She's like, probably like, I'd rather wear my jumpsuit. Because quite honestly, I mean, my kids look homeless most of the time. That's like the style now. But anyway, yeah, so today though, I thought she was dressed like an old lady. She had this like white sweater with these big buttons. It just looked like a grandma. I was like, all right. I mean, I guess they have limited options, the public defender's clothes closet. I don't know. Anyway, so she was that, she looked pretty disheveled though. Her hair is just kind of this weird, just kind of in her face. She looked real broken out, like she'd maybe been picking at it. And she was in distress the entire trial today. I know there's going to be people out there that say, I didn't see tears. I saw tears. Sonia, you had mentioned that it looked like it was the first time she'd ever heard the 911 call and seen the body cam footage, and I had the same thought. I was wondering, how did they prep her for this? Was she expecting it? Um, was she expecting to hear that today? Because she almost looked panicked when she saw the dispatcher walk in. It was almost like a no, 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 I don't want to hear this. She looked very agitated, Adrienne. She looked very unhealthy. She was covering her eyes. She was sobbing. She had a whole handful of snot, pardon me, but she did at one point. Yeah, she did. She was not doing well today. So the opening statement, so the prosecution went through, and of course, they don't support her insanity defense. They talked about her having this. Oh, wait, I want to back up. The judge, I don't know if you guys caught this, but when he was giving instructions to the jurors, he said, no, you are not allowed to take notes. I thought that I maybe I've heard that before, but usually it's like you can take notes, but you have to leave them here. And he said because people who take good notes are going to be relied upon by the people who don't take good notes. And the judge wants them to go on their memory, not their notes, so that it's like equal playing ground or something. I don't know. I thought that was so weird. He said also you don't, hey Dizzy, yay, thanks for being here. Also, thank you everyone for being here. This is so cool. Yeah, so the notes thing was so bizarre. I guess they do that somewhere. They said you can't pay attention and take notes. Okay, listen, ADHD over here. I gotta take notes, or I'm like, wait, what did they say? I gotta like keep myself focused. So I just thought that was so odd. I don't know. That's very weird. Anyway, so yeah, no notes. The jurors cannot do notes. And I also just want to mention, I don't know if you saw the end where the judge was saying, okay, you have a very important decision to make for lunch tomorrow. And that man offered them pork from the prison. I'm sorry. I just thought that was so funny. He's like, the prison's serving pork chops and I will be eating a pork chop. Otherwise, you have a very limited menu from some other restaurant. I was like, okay, did they serve jurors prison food for lunch? I don't like, how much worse can it get? Be a juror. You can be traumatized by testimony, eat pork chops from prison, and no notes, okay? So you better be caffeinated. Like, I hope it's air conditioned at least in there. Okay. Because it's hot in Mississippi right now. All right. So moving on to more serious matters. The prosecution painted this picture that Carly had this secret life that her parents didn't know about. Now, most teenagers probably have a little bit of a secret life that their parents don't know about. But they said, she secretly had burner phones. She secretly had an iPod. She secretly had been cutting herself on her legs, which we'll talk a little bit more about that they didn't know that she was secretly using marijuana vapes. And I feel like when I say that, I feel like I'm really old and I'm like the marijuana cigarettes. But anyway, so marijuana vapes, and that a friend had recently told Ashley, the mother, about concerns about the marijuana use, and that's sort of what triggered all of this. And that's the picture that they painted. It was she was going to be in trouble. She had recently gotten in trouble at school for cheating. They really made her sound like a juvenile delinquent, honestly. Adrian, I love you so much. I'm 31, so I have a secret life. I'm 44 and I do too. So, I mean, no, they're not watching this, but I mean, if I guess it's not a secret if I say that on here, right? That is so funny, but they really did. They made her sound like this kid that was like a major troublemaker. And I was like, that's really interesting. But the defense came up and they said something similar, like, what 14-year-old doesn't have things going on in their life that their parents don't know about, right? This isn't some hardened criminal. This is a teenager making poor choices, right? I think we can probably all relate to that, even not just as teenagers at times. But the defense, a couple things that they talked about. Obviously, we know the mental illness piece of it, that she was struggling, with some mental health issues. And they didn't go into that a ton, other than to say she had seen a therapist for anxiety and she was diagnosed with anxiety and trouble dealing with stress. And so we don't have a complete picture yet of what the mental health stuff entails. I'm really hoping the defense is able to present their witnesses on this, because it obviously a very important piece of it. Um, Carly was very distraught during even the defense openings. At first there weren't tears, and I was like, oh, everybody's gonna be like, oh, there's no tears, but something important to know, and I don't know this for sure, but they did talk about her being treated with antipsychotics while in prison. I've heard that from a couple different places, and psychiatric medications can cause people sometimes to feel the emotion, but not be able to display it properly. I don't know if you may have even had that experience where you feel like, I want to cry, but I can't. And that's real. Like that can happen. But I did eventually see real tears. I mean, there was. At first she just looked like panicked and, oh my gosh, like I can't. I'm wondering how she'll be able to cope as time goes on. Hopefully today, well, today's not going to be the worst, because I'm sure they're going to go through the autopsy. Oh, so I don't know how they're prepping her for this, and I don't know what supports that she has after, and I'm very concerned about that, mostly because she's going back into isolation after this. And let me tell you, prove me wrong, somebody please. Prisons are the worst place for mental health treatment. So like, what could happen to her in this adult prison is that they say, "Oh my gosh, she can't cope with her trial right now. This is awful. This is terrible. Put her in a suicide gown, put her in a turtle suit, and stick her in a different isolation cell and have someone stare at her for, you know, hours on end, and then dress her for court, and she can go there." But I just really hope they don't do that. I just really hope that someone is gonna be supportive of her when she gets back there, and that's a very slim chance. Hopefully her attorneys are on top of that. And Dizzy, yeah, I do think there's genuine remorse there, but still, again, this is just so hard to wrap your head around, and there are certain details that are going to be challenging for this insanity defense, because with the insanity defense, you have to, um you have to show that they were unable to appreciate the wrongfulness of what they were doing, unable to appreciate the consequences of what they were doing, um, and to not have control over their actions due to mental defect. Excuse me. And they're going to have a hard time, I think, simply because of the fact that she got the gun, she hid it behind her back. She checked to make sure no one was there. After she shot her mom, she logged onto her mom's phone. She tried to find out when her stepdad was like, there appear to be very organized things that she did. Um, I also know that in a state of psychosis, not every single thing is disorganized, especially when it's earlier onset, or we call it prodromal. It's sort of like symptoms leading up to full blown issues. And so you don't always, some things may seem logical and other things do not. Calling a friend over to show what you've done is not an organized, it, it appears organized because she intentionally called her friend, had her friend come over. However, we call that disorganized because it doesn't make sense, right? Why would you have someone come over to see what you did? You're clearly going to get caught, right? For that. There's a witness now. Like, so we call that in psychology, I say we, disorganized behavior, because that would not make sense. She did lie about inviting the friend over. Yeah, so that's where we see this like inconsistency, which in the world of the law, those things are bad. In the world of psychology, we can say we understand the course of an illness and the course of a crisis, when someone's in a psychotic break. But in the law, it's very different, right? So the thing I didn't like about the defense opening, there were so I didn't know I feel like there were triple, quadruple negatives. She's like, and there's no reason why you should not find her not guilty of. I was like, okay, wait a minute, what? I don't know. Dizzy, why did they fight so hard to not have a mental health eval? Not to have a mental which side? I'm not sure. The defense, they they wanted their expert to do it. They had some issues with, getting things done on time, which I thought was so wild. Like, why wouldn't they be asking for a continuance? Because I was saying in our last show, as an expert, if I got a case in July that was a murder case and I needed to have a report and everything done by September, like, there's no way. I wouldn't be confident that I did the best that I could, and it's a really important report. So, I wouldn't even take that case if I didn't think there could be a continuance, and that I'm very confused about that. I really felt like her attorneys weren't advocating for her enough. I don't know what the deal is. So, and I also, Dizzy, I don't know if you know this, but I'm still not clear if they're able to submit those reports or have those witnesses testify. Because I think we had talked on Discord about this, Dizzy, because they were supposed to have a hearing last Friday to talk about all this, and then they didn't. So I don't, or they might have, but it wasn't streamed, and I don't know what happened to. Anyway, so there was also, yeah, it takes a long time. So Dizzy, so maybe this will be helpful when if I'm going to do a an ins, not competency trial, sorry. If I'm going to do a not guilty by reason of insanity evaluation for a murder case, particularly a murder case of a juvenile with a juvenile involved, um, I'm oh, our mascot probably is going to start like barking really loud at some point, so I apologize. So I'm going to need to do not only spend a lot of hours with this individual, I'm going to want to interview all of her teachers, her her stepfather, her friends. I'm going to want to I'm going to look at all the discovery. I'm going to look at the police reports. I'm going to look at educational records. I'm going to look at all the mental health records, and I'm going to talk to the mental health providers who are involved. It could potentially involve consultation with psychiatry, her medication provider. I'm going to do testing on her. I'm going to, because she's a juvenile, potentially have other people who know her very well fill out inventories about her and her behavior. I'm going to want to see any of the text messages, journals, anything that they have that is an expression of her mental state at the time. I'm going to want to talk with how she's been doing since she's been arrested. So I'm going to have to talk with people at the jail, her providers there. There's so much involved. And then you've got to write this report, which is going to take you several days. So in order to be able to come to a conclusion that is logical, that I can testify on the stand to, it's going to take a really long time. Like I would say, gosh, at least 3 months, and that's if I'm putting other stuff on hold. So yeah, so it's just wild to me they didn't ask for continuance because I would probably want more than one expert. Yeah, and that's what I worry about, Dizzy. If they didn't find someone who's very thorough, this could all fall apart real quick. And the judges are already mad about it, right? So, Adrian, this is a good point. Her being locked up 23 hours a day. So, on the mental state side of things, prison's the worst place for people who are psychotic. So, if she is psychotic, then that isolation creates this situation where you don't have a frame of reference to bounce things off of. And so if you are already hi Marie, I just saw your hi. If you are already having a hard time with reality testing and then you're isolated, what do you have to reference? Your own thoughts, your own actions, and that's not good. People become more psychotic in isolation. In fact, people who aren't psychotic can become psychotic in isolation. People who are depressed, the behavioral activation piece of keeping yourself out of depression is it's impossible to so when people are depressed, one of the things that can be helpful for them is like find one thing to do, get out of the house for one thing a day. Like if you're severely depressed, right? You've got to get in that habit of activation, because the more you lay around, the worse you're going to feel. And it's very hard to get up, right? So if you're severely depressed and you're in prison and there is nothing to do, that's really not going to be helpful. So yeah, I that's a really good point. Okay. So there's mention of journals. I'm hoping that we're going to see those. How I really hope she's continuing to be prepped for the evidence that's going to be shown. I almost feel like she probably shouldn't be there for the autopsy, not just because, I mean, think about no matter what, any 14-year-old, 15-year-old seeing their mother's autopsy. Come on. So we had the first witness was Kevin Collins. He was the dispatcher. And the first thing I wrote down was his face was so red, that poor man. I didn't know who it was going to be because I'm like, what is he so nervous about? Anyway, that they played the 911 call and it was horrific. I almost cried. The stepfather calls, you can't even tell what he's saying, because he's so hysterical. And finally he's able to explain some of what happened. And then you realize he stumbled upon Ashley, and he yells that she killed her mom. And just I listened to the whole thing because I knew as a show, I'm like, I need to listen to this. It was very hard. It was awful, awful, awful. So he when then we saw the body cam. So the deputy showed up. And something that I thought was so interesting. Yeah, Marie, beware, because that 911 call is just like gut wrenching. And Carly's crying and she's snotting and she's a total wreck. Just like the reality of that day sinking in for her. I'm sure in some ways she's been able to dissociate from the reality of what happened. And the family members sitting in the courtroom. I don't even know. I just can't even. It was really tough. So the body cam showed Heath, the stepdad, coming out. He falls onto the porch. I mean, he'd been shot too, in the neck, sort of shoulder area, and he's talking about. And this was so interesting. The deputy kept saying, "Sir, we need you to calm down. Where is your son? Where did your son go? What was your son wearing?" And I thought that was so interesting because he had said daughter, but I think we've talked about this before, how rare it is for a juvenile to commit parricide, but also a female. It was wild. Like he just assumed this was a boy. This could not have been a girl, right? It's just so interesting. Yeah, and then yeah, the 911 well, and the 911 call, dispatcher even was like, 14. Like he's like, "Wait, this was your daughter? How old's your daughter?" 14. I know. I mean, it's just very shocking. So we saw the body cam, and then yeah, what is your son wearing? What is your son wearing? And then we got to the judge offering pork chops from the jail. I had to repeat that because I know Marie's going to love that part. So the judge said, you need to decide what you want for lunch tomorrow. And he was dead serious that the jail's serving pork chops. And that he would be eating one. So if that's what the jury wanted, they need to let him know. Okay. Then we have, so after I talk about this, then I want to kind of back up a second, but pork chops. I know, like, you have to have some levity, right? Like, thank goodness the judge talked about pork chops. Like, okay, break me from this, like, oh my God. Okay. The audio and video then cut out because a juvenile testified, and in Mississippi, they don't allow any audio or video. But thanks to Court TV, they, who I just, well, I'll beef on Court TV another time, but they actually were posting what the questions and answers were. Someone was in the courtroom. So this was a boy who's 16 years old now. His mom was also a teacher at the same school as he and Carly went to, and where Carly's mom taught. And he said that he had never seen a negative interaction between Carly and her mom, that they got along really well, that Carly was like this genius girl and never got in trouble. He said she got in trouble one time and he was shocked. And that was when she cheated on a math test. Which by all accounts, it seems like she didn't really need to do that. Like she seems like a very smart girl. Um, that the day of the murder, she was sitting alone in the cafeteria and he saw her in there and she spilled her drink and he made some joke about it and that she got really mad. And that was very unusual for her. So he thought that was very strange. He was well aware of Carly smoking marijuana and having a burner phone. And he was so concerned. He was kind of vague about his observations of her. But uh, he said he knew she was going down a rabbit hole, like she was spiraling, but he didn't really explain that in a whole lot of detail, at least from what Court TV was saying. And he said he knew he needed to tell her mom. And so he went to her mom and he said her mom was disappointed, but didn't seem mad or angry. She just seemed very disappointed about it. And after he told the mom, he sent an email later saying, can you maybe not confront her about this today? Can you like wait? Because he didn't want Carly to know that he had told. So then at some point, he said he never knew Carly to be violent, but he knew that when she got in trouble or was really stressed out, she would self-harm. So that was his primary concern, was that she was going to hurt herself. They had FaceTimed at some point, and I wasn't clear on when that was. But he said to her, like, please, that she was fighting tears. And he said, please just don't hurt yourself or anyone else. And she said, well, it's too late. I don't know if that was after mom died or if she had hurt herself. But he said that he still considers her a friend. It sounds like they still talk, that she hasn't said anything to him about killing her mom or anything like that. He's not afraid of her. He considers her a friend. And the the defense tried to ask, were your primary concerns, based on all that you know, your primary concerns seemed pretty mental health related, and there's an objection that was sustained. And then asked about the drug use, and he said that yes, the marijuana smoking was one of his primary concerns. And then the defense tried to slip in there again, but was that ultimately related to mental health issues? And they weren't allowed to ask that. So, really interesting. So he has still seemed to have a very positive, like he really cares about her, had a really positive take on Carly. And I think this is very shocking. Now, what also happened is she called him or texted him after she had killed her mom and said, please help, come and please help. And he was like, what's your address? I'm riding my bike. What's your address? So she gave it to him, and he was riding into her house and he saw the police car, the first police car. So he went and he hid because he was too scared. He didn't know what was happening. So this isn't the friend that actually went to the house. This was a friend that she had contacted about 5 different friends for help. So yeah. Yes. ARG 333, many adults become psychotic in that setting. How she's still deemed competent at this age is very interesting. She has to be having some major things happening for her and her thought patterns. Yes. So her competencies based on her understanding, largely her understanding of the roles in the court and how things work, her ability to reason, her ability to provide information to her attorneys that will be helpful. I have a really hard time with any young teenager being competent, just because like how great could their reasoning be? For example, one of the things that we explore with them is like their ability to plea bargain, right? How could somebody who is 14 make a decision on a plea bargain where it's 40 years versus 90 years, and like all of the mental health piece? I mean, you're really at the mercy of your attorneys, right? And we like for people to be able to say, no, I could challenge this, my attorney on this, and reason differently, even if they advise something, but with a good reason. And I don't get how any young teenager could possibly fathom what those decisions mean in the long term. But Sonia, you were a good girl, okay? Sonia was in Catholic school, never even thought about smoking marijuana. I mean, many people don't. I mean, okay, I'm probably naive, but my daughter, there's no way. Anyways, um, and yes, so isolation at that age can stunt brain development. Yeah, so if she isn't, I just, I don't know. I strongly believe, regardless of what anyone thinks about her character or whether or not she's mentally ill, she really should be in a juvenile facility. I get the risk factor for violence. I get it, but yeah, it can stunt their development. I mean, I'm telling you, even adults who are in isolation, and luckily it hasn't been for that long, although that seems like an eternity to a young kid. Um, vision problems because the lighting's terrible, bone growth and like physical development, sleeping on the terrible beds. You know, she's definitely not getting enough activity. Her brain is developing. She's not, this is a really smart girl that probably thrives on learning and education and that mental stimulation. And so, I mean, like there's only so many books you can read, right? Like she's not in school. It's just really, really hard. Yeah, it's really tough. And yeah, Adrian, like these are hard decisions for even adults to make. I think isolation is the absolute worst place for her right now, and it breaks my heart. She's still a human and she's still a kid. So, I want to talk about the marijuana piece of this because, like a lot of kids smoke marijuana, and I know we don't want to think they do, but they do. Interviews with juveniles are so, I don't mean funny, haha, but I'll say, tell me when the first time was that you used a drug. Oh, I don't use any drugs. Okay. Um, do you smoke? Yeah. Cigarettes? No. Marijuana. Okay, so that's a drug. They're like, "What?" Like it doesn't even I know it's legal in a lot of places, but not for 14-year-olds. And it's just funny because it's like, "No, I don't do drugs. I just smoke weed." It's like, "Okay." Or, "Oh no, no, I don't drink. I just have a beer every once in a while." It's like, then okay, well, you drink. But it's a lot. Yeah, no, I only smoke weed, I promise. I don't do any drugs. It's like crickets. Um, but it's just so commonplace. Now we do know from recent studies in the past 5 years, adolescents who smoke marijuana are at higher risk for developing psychosis than those who do not. It can also speed along a psychotic process that is already genetically, if you're genetically predisposed to psychosis and you smoke marijuana as an adolescent, it can speed along the development and the showing of those symptoms. And so it is possible. They did mention in the defense openings that there's a family history on her dad's side of mental illness, and that Carly was terrified that she would be mentally ill like her father's side of the family. And apparently that's where the journals come in, is that she knew something was wrong with her and she worried about that. Um, so the uh, it's possible if she already was predisposed to a psychotic disorder that the marijuana was not helping her. Um, However, we also have to talk about, why is she smoking marijuana? What is she getting from that? She was being treated for anxiety, right? So that could have been something. She tried it. She's like, "Oh, this is really helpful." There's it's tricky because at that age there's so much development happening. Um, yeah, so let's see here. Somebody was saying something about what's going on, like, what was going on in the juvenile centers, what do they have, right. So, there are good ones and bad ones, you're right, ARG 333 was saying. Um, Sometimes they can be more dangerous, right, because adolescents we know are more impulsive, they're quicker to fight, their reasoning, their logic, their judgment isn't as developed as adults. More fights, it can be very dangerous, they're vulnerable. So you have older adolescents as opposed to younger adolescents. You have a 12-year-old with a 17-year-old, and you got issues there with vulnerability. It depends on how structured it is, and it depends on what programs they offer for sure. But it's at least programming. They at least are required to receive some programming. Adult prison programming is basically optional. So and the mental health care, yeah. Um, so yeah, curious about what the mental health history looks like on her dad's side. They didn't say exactly what it is. Did they, Adrian? I didn't hear them say anything specific, just that there was some mental health. She did not have siblings. No, there's no one else in the home. She's an only child. Um, she had not had any contact with her biological father in the past year. I believe there was some family court dealings going on, but that hasn't been mentioned, so I don't think that's gonna be part of the case. Um, so that was really interesting. I think oh, one of the things oh, this was so interesting. So one of the things that the defense, I believe, is who mentioned it. It was either that or it was the dispatcher, but somebody today was saying that the stepfather drug-induced mental health issues on his side is what Dizzy said. Okay, I mean, that's really fitting here, right? Like, she's using drugs. If that induced psychosis for him, I mean, it could for her too. Very likely, especially with her age. So her stepdad apparently thought when he came home and she attacked him, he said she looked so terrified. Well, he didn't say this. Someone was describing that he said this. Um, she looked so terrified that and was just screaming, and he couldn't tell what she was saying. And then he wrested the gun from her, and she fled. And he went around the house because he thought she must have thought he was an intruder. That means there must have been someone who broke in, and that's why she had the gun to defend herself. And she was terrified. And so he's looking around thinking there's someone else in the house, some intruder in the house. And then dawns on him there's not. And then, he's called 911 and he's wandering in and then he finds his wife. And so I just thought that was really interesting too. I mean, we know her stepdad's in support of her. In fact, was willing to take her back home with him if she could get out on bond so that he could get her mental health treatment. She has a slew of family that's there in the courtroom supporting her in every hearing. And when the judge asked who her family members were, this was a couple like last week or a couple weeks ago, t- probably about 10 to 20 people raised their hands. And then the judge said, like, who here is in support of her being on bond, coming out? They all raised their hands. So clearly nobody knew how serious this was. And given her ability to hide things, given her confusion about what was going on with her, it's really not hard to believe that. So I feel for her. I know some people are like, doesn't matter. She killed her mom. She's evil. I truly, when you think about the people that we see, like it's adults, right? Because we very rarely see a juvenile. But um, in trial like this, especially a female, they're typically so stone faced, right? Like you're like, "Hello, what's going on there?" I mean, she's a wreck. She's a complete wreck. And I don't think that she's crying for herself. I don't think she's crying because of her potential future in jail forever. Adrian's saying, could she have been maybe having episodes or seeing things? Yeah, I mean, if she's psychotic, then by definition, she's having hallucinations, seeing things, hearing things that aren't really there, or delusional thoughts, paranoid thoughts. That's what I really hope we get to hear from somebody. Um, yeah, Dizzy, I was a little worried about coming on here tonight because I really have compassion for her, and I know people don't always take very kindly to that. Um, you know, people typically are not born psychopaths. I mean, we don't know that for certain. People are predisposed to things, but just it does. Her past doesn't add up to this event. There wasn't a progression of violence throughout her life. There wasn't, we don't know what attachment things happened with her, maybe early childhood. We don't know what happened with her and her dad's relationship. However, the manifestation. So when the prosecution comes and says, "Oh, she cheated on our test and she's hiding these things from her mom," when? It sounds like that was all within this year, right? So as an evaluator, that's what I want to know. I want to know in the past 6 to 12 months, what's been going on. Before that, were there issues? No, no issues. Okay. So when did this behavior start? When did the drug use start? When did she cheat on this test? When did she first start telling her friends about smoking weed? Like, that's what I want to know, because if that's all very recent, that tells me that this is not some evil child. This is a child that something happened to her that day. That was a buildup, a recent buildup. Um, and she's very young to have this happen, to have that kind of a break happen. Um, Dizzy, yay, safe place. Yes, we are a safe place. We have compassion here. I mean, I gotta tell you, like, I probably it doesn't always, well, okay, there's been a couple people that I'm like, when they get sentenced, I'm like, "Mhm, okay." But for the most part, it always sucks watching people get sentenced, you know? Like, we're still human, and ah, I will say the one person that it did not phase me at all was Letitia Stout when she was sentenced. I was like, "You're very dangerous. Bye." But, you know, people do bad things, but they're still humans, and no, she wasn't it's not an excuse for what she did. She wasn't well, um, but we also have to think in terms of rehabilitation for her. So, okay, quick story. So when I worked in the state hospital, I worked with a mom who had a psychotic break. There was alcohol involved. I think that it was all kind of intertwined, though. I don't think this was like I think the mental illness came first than the alcohol. But she, without giving too much like identifying information, she had some delusions surrounding her child. And she had a plan that and it was going to be like a murder suicide. And her suicide did not work. She killed her child that she felt she was saving them from this delusional stuff she had going on. And she was truly psychotic. And she went to the state hospital and got stabilized, and watching her realize what she had done was horrifying. It was traumatizing. And she made a lot of progress, but in the end, right before her release, I mean, this was several years, I kind of tracked how she was doing, because they would post in the news all the time about, oh, she was up for release, did she get released, what did her doctor say? But when she's ultimately released, she changed her name, she moved, she's still under supervision, for probably the rest of her life, probation-wise, but they let her leave the state, and it's just, yeah, I mean, it's not her fault that she had a psychotic disorder. It happened to her, and I think that's what people need to realize is that, even if there are drugs involved, severe mental illness happens to people. They don't choose that. Um, and it's hard for us people who do have control over their behavior and can recognize when your thoughts are off. If they ever get that way, it's hard for us to understand how somebody can completely not be able to control that. So that's kind of that's kind of where I am. And this is why I'll never be picked for a jury because they see psychologists on my form and they're like, hit the road. I had jury duty this week and they settled all the cases and just kept us till 1 o'clock and sent us home. I was like, but you guys, other questions that you have? Because I'm like, with this case, I need to watch every second. And then Adelson is starting, Donna Adelson, at the same time. And I told Adrian earlier today, cancel all of my appointments, cancel everything in life. Like, how am I going to handle these two trials all at the same time? I don't know what to do. So yeah, there's going to be some major neglect of a lot of responsibilities this week. Okay, Dizzy, good question. What about people who repeatedly choose to stop their meds and commit crime time after time? Would it then be their fault? So the organ of disease here in mental illness. I feel like I keep covering myself with comments. Sorry, Catholic. Hi. The organ of disease is the brain. The brain controls reason, logic, judgment. So a lot of it depends on how severe the mental illness is. It is pretty standard for medication non-compliance with people who have major mental illnesses. So that gets into some dicey areas. We also kind of have to consider, what's the non-compliance about? Are there intolerable side effects? I guess this would be more in terms of mitigating circumstances, right? And so there will be people who are non-compliant, commit crimes if they're not in mental health court, if they are not deemed insane at the time of the crime. And a lot of these are like not petty crimes, but they're not murder offenses like murder. There'd be like burglary or loitering or public drunkenness and things like that. They probably are still going to get some kind of, punishment. But those would be like mitigating factors, right? So yeah, he stopped his meds and he went and committed this crime, or she, but they're also homeless. Their insurance lapsed, or the pharmacy, the pharmacy wasn't able to fill their script, or if there's intellectual impairment, how good are they at accessing the resources in the community? Do they have a support system? So there's a lot of different factors involved with that. Oh, the dude who jumped at the, okay. I have very strong opinions about that. Okay. Now I know that I said that in psychotic episodes, people can have moments of lucidity. However, he sat there for a good couple minutes talking about, I got a job, I'm working full time, I'm in a much better state of mind. I blah, 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 blah. He's talking. And then the judge is like, I'm sorry. And he jumped the judge. Nah, I don't believe that that's a result of non-compliance with medication. I actually would be very surprised if that man even has a psychotic disorder. He did not. I mean, I don't know a ton about him, but just my clinical gut tells me that man is antisocial. He is a lifelong criminal, and this does not have anything to do with mental health. I think he thought, I'm going to jail for a long time anyway. This will be fun. I just don't think it. Mama Adelson. Oh my God. Yeah. Do I think Carly will take the stand? I don't think she should. I don't know how well Carly articulates information about her own illness, and I would imagine that she would be an emotional nightmare on the stand. So it's very hard for people who are psychotic and then stabilize to articulate what was going on when they were psychotic. So I wouldn't think that would go very well for her. I think it's best for her to have someone, an expert who has spoken with her, be able to describe what Carly told them and put that into context in terms of how it fits a particular diagnosis or thought disorder or thought process. I think if Carly tries to go up there and explain it at 14, 15 years old, I would worry about that. I think she probably emotionally wouldn't be able to. I don't think she could withstand cross. She wouldn't know how to describe it, and it would sound I think my guess would be it would sound way too vague. Because she just wouldn't remember. She wouldn't know necessarily what was going on. So yeah, I kind of hope she doesn't. So do you guys think Wendy's going to testify? Oh, you guys, wait a minute. Forget Wendy. Sarah Boone's coming up too, and she now has an attorney and a co-counsel. My girl, wait, guys, wait. My girl, she used her executive advertising skills. This was from my Dizzy. I don't know if you saw my Sarah Boone video, but these are my instructions to Judge Kranick. Hopefully he saw the video. But what the heck? You guys, can you believe it? Can you believe that she ran for student council president? And she won? Oh my God, I'm dying. I'm dying. Adrian, how? How did this happen? It's so great. I love it. I'm gonna have to do another Sarah video soon. I made her into a sticker on my phone too. It's like the funniest thing. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Sonia, I'm sorry. We need to get back to serious. Yes, I can't. Sonia, what do you think about this? What do you think the crying was about? Do you think it was remorse? Do you think it was remorse for herself or what she did? We have two very different conversations going on here. It's so funny. I know. I know. I can't. How come every time I hear Sarah Boone, I'm like, oh my gosh, Adam Montgomery. Okay. Adam Montgomery, no, I did not have compassion for him either. But many I do. Yes. I would agree with you. I would totally agree with you, ARG. I didn't have a ton of compassion for Lori Shaver this week. I don't know if you guys followed that. I think it was the way that she put her daughter up there. I knew exactly what her daughter was going to say. Sarah, I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to feel about her when she gets sentenced. Sorry, she only allegedly did what they said. So I'll just keep my comments. Menendez brothers, Adrian, trying to get me canceled right before we go off air. I have a lot of compassion for the Menendez brothers. I do. I think that their trial in the 80s, it was in the 80s, I believe. Their trial would look very different now than it did then because of our increased sensitivity to issues of abuse. I think at the very least, they would have that very strong mitigating factors. So even if found, I think they would be found guilty still. I don't think they would be in prison for life. I think their opportunities for parole would have come quicker than most. So yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, Sonia. I mean, Lori. So here's the thing, right? So Lori Shaver, right? Gets on the stand and does whatever that was. When she's sentenced, she doesn't even cry. Like, if you were on trial for a crime that you did not commit and they came back with guilty and how do you not break down? I don't care how prepared you are for that. Like, that tells me, I'm always like, like, I feel like, okay, they got it right when somebody's like this the whole time they're sentenced, like, or found when the verdict's read. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. Casey, Adrian, we don't even have enough time. Casey Anthony, that's like when JFK was shot. Like, I'll never forget where I was when Casey Anthony's verdict came in, and I almost went into catatonia. I couldn't even believe it. Yeah, that was wild. That was so wild. It's okay, Adrian. It's all good. Who else? Throw out some other people. I will say though, who was it that who was the girl who she was accused of poisoning the lady with Visine? They had been like, she'd been like her caretaker. I can't think of what her name is. I will say her dedication to her not guilty plea and her reaction to being found guilty and to being sentenced. I mean, she either truly has convinced herself that she did not kill that woman or she's not guilty. But I think she is. So I don't know. She just was good. Amanda Knox. Adrian's like, let me just go through everyone. I need a list and I'll just check off what I think. I don't think that Amanda Knox is guilty. I think she's really weird. And that's why people think she's guilty. I think that happens to people. I hate to say, and I don't mean to say weird and be like crass about that, but like I think that sometimes people have when people act in a bizarre fashion, we assume that makes them more guilty than not, if that makes sense. I think she's an eccentric personality, and that makes people think she was more likely to have done what they accused her of. So, I don't know. I know there's some people out there that really think she's guilty that I'm surprised think that, but yeah, I know. Adrian keeping me on my toes. Anything you've got a couple more minutes, Adrian. Anybody else? It's so funny. You guys are awesome for being here. Please like the video, subscribe, tell your friends. This is really fun. Scott is he just had another commitment tonight, so he'll be back, but it was kind of fun to do this and chat with you guys. I feel like we could talk all night. You could all just come on and we can have little squares everywhere and we can all just chat. It'd be really fun. But I appreciate you being here and yeah. So stay tuned. We're going to try to have, especially in light of this case with Carly Gregg, I'm working on getting a colleague of mine uh, in here to talk a little bit more about the insanity defense. He's worked on some high profile cases that he won't be able to mention because some of them are ongoing, but he is like a wealth of information. And so hoping to get him booked soon. Regardless, whether or not I'm going to be following this trial. I may pop on here for short lives. We'll definitely be back on the 23rd to talk some more. And I love you guys too. You're so awesome. Oh, and then Adrian, Mary Kay Letourneau. Okay, I'm going to stop now. You can DM me about Mary Kay. You guys are awesome. I will see you soon, and we will stay keeping each other posted on this wild trial. Hey Shannon, I missed you. I'm glad you said hi. I'll talk to you guys soon. Like and subscribe. Bye.